Hello, everybody. Today is March 24th, and this continues our religion lesson for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And today we'll be talking about Hannah, the mother of Samuel, and our little caption is Hannah continued praying before the Lord. And that's something we all should do. We should continue praying before the Lord. But before we can get to the beautiful story of Hannah and Samuel, we have to get some business out of the way. I need you to answer 3 questions for me, and that's from yesterday's story on Ruth. I need to know what people was Ruth from. I need to know whom does God call. So is it one individual group of people, or could it be, I don't know. You answer the question. And why is the story of Naomi a good example for us today? Okay? So you might have to go back and look at that PowerPoint to see if you can answer those questions. And please send me those questions to cbaldwin@sacbstx.org. So let's talk about Samuel. The book of Samuel relates to the beginnings in Israel of a monarchy. Okay? So before that, Israel was tribal. When we look at the book of Judges and the book of Ruth, Israel was tribal. The principal figures in this book leading up to the establishment of the monarchy are the first king, Saul, the prophet Samuel, who anoints Saul and later anoints David, and of course David. And then, of course, in the beginning of the book, we talk about the later judgment that falls on Eli and his family. His evil sons were reported killed in battle, and hearing the news about them and the ark's capture, he falls backward and breaks his neck and dies. Which is why you should never lean back on your chair. No, just kidding. Okay, so we're going to start with Hannah. Poor Hannah, she was barren. And we're going to look at a book called Bible Babes by Andrea Stevens. And she correctly points out that the worst disgrace to fall on any Hebrew woman was that she was barren. She begins her chapter with an imaginary look at Hannah with other mothers and them talking about what their kid did today and what their kid did yesterday and that type of thing. And she kind of cranks out a little tear. But and it's a great, you know, leap, I guess. But actually, barren women were looked upon as having committed a sin, or someone in their family having committed the sin. It's never the husband. The husband's never blamed. It's always the woman. And the husband could always divorce a barren wife. So we actually take a passage from 1 Samuel. Her husband, Elkanah, would ask her, Hannah, why are you crying? Why won't you eat? Why are you always so sad? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? One time after they had finished their meal in the house of the Lord at Shiloh, Hannah got up. She was deeply distressed, and she cried bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. So actually, Hannah's husband actually had 2 wives, which was okay by Moses' prescription. And, you know, the more wives you had, the more children you had. The whole purpose of having wives was to have a lot of children. And so he had another wife, and she had plenty of children, let me tell you. And so Hannah's very distressed about this. She's blaming herself for this. And at the celebration that her and her family are at, she actually finds her way back to the tabernacle that night in the midst of the celebration to pour her heart out to the Lord. Now, Eli the priest, he would be sitting at the entrance of the tent, and when he saw her crying in front of the tabernacle, he thought she was drunk. And this would be natural because it was a celebration going on. But he soon found out that she was very troubled. And the thing I really love about Eli's speech, and this is just to tell you, Eli was not a perfect guy. But even imperfect people can give us a message from God, right? And he tells her to be at peace. So whatever's bothering you, lady, God's going to take care of it. Be at peace. So a few years later, she returns with her son Samuel, and she actually gives her son to the Lord. She actually gives her son to Eli to raise. Now, we turn now to the Jerome Biblical Commentary. And in the Jerome Biblical Commentary, they compare Hannah's barrenness to Israel being leaderless. So remember I told you Israel was a very tribal society at that point. They needed a leader, someone who could definitely lead the people. And when Hannah has a child, the commentary points out that she has a song that says, "None is like the Lord, Israel's foes will be broken," which is an indication of Samuel's involvement with a future king. Not that he would be the future king, but involvement with a future king. So one night, Samuel hears, "Samuel, Samuel." And so he gets up and he goes to Eli and says, "What is it, Lord?" And Eli says, "I didn't call you, go back to bed. You had a bad dream." And then again he says, he hears, "Samuel, Samuel." And he goes to Eli and says, "Hey, look, did you need me?" And Eli's like, "No, I didn't call you, go back to bed." Third time it happens, Eli recognizes that it is the Lord. And I find it interesting that, again, remember I told you, even bad people can have good points. Eli, even though he's a sinner, recognizes that the Lord is speaking to Samuel. So he tells Samuel, "Okay, go back to bed. When you hear, again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" And so that is very true to life. A lot of times we think people are either bad or good, but people are a mixture of things. And so eventually Eli and his sons provoked the displeasure of God. And maybe that's why God didn't speak to him. But they provoked the displeasure of God, and eventually all three of them die.